Hey, welcome back, YouTube. We're covering EU stuff right now. There's actually quite a scandal happening in the European Parliament. VP Eva Kaili, among four, held in graft probe by a judicial. This is by a judicial source. We have a link here from France 24 covering this scandal, and hopefully they get into some of the ramifications of this. I'm not quite sure what the graft probe is or what any of this actually means, but some people are freaking out. People with money are freaking out. So we better pay attention to it and see what the hell's going on here. I would hate for Daddy Bezos to be disappointed.
Vice President of the EU Parliament, Eva Kaili, is among the four people being held.
How do you say that? Kaili?
President of the EU Parliament, Eva Kaili, is among
Kaili. Okay.
Vice President of the EU Parliament, Eva Kaili, is among the four.
Exactly, Clutch Cargo. You understand. This is the News Underground. We're a legitimate source of information. That doesn't mean we can't have fun and be completely insane when we're doing it. Look, if you haven't lost your mind, if you're coming to the politics section of Twitch and you haven't lost your mind, what are you doing? Go insane. Go a little mad. Arthur Dent went a little mad in A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, and there was nothing but benefits.
People being held in a graft investigation. Kaili, who's also a Greek MEP, had been suspended from her duties. Now the Belgian judicial system's looking into allegations that officials from Qatar had attempted to bribe her and three other parliamentary assistants in exchange for political favors.
Is this over the World fucking Cup for real, or is this just general corruption that Qatar got called out? That Qatar is getting called out for because of the World Cup. Ah!
Well, for more on that story, we're joined by our Brussels correspondent, Dave Keating. So, Dave, the latest news that we have is that Eva Kaili will indeed be staying in police custody along with those three other people. What else do we know?
Police custody?
Yeah, I mean, this scandal is really rocking Brussels this weekend. It feels like it's all anyone can talk about in the next days.
Don't you love it? Rocking Brussels, but mainstream media. Oh, it's rocking Brussels. Literally, politicians being held by police. Hunter Biden. Can we talk about Hunter Biden? What about Kirsten Sinema? What about bipartisanship? Can we talk about that instead? Go to CNN. Let's see. Let me just show you a quick example. CNN.com, CNN.com. News for everybody. This is supposed to be mainstream news, right? Let's try to find the story about European scandal on CNN. Let's have some fun. Let's just go ahead and cut to the chase. Let's just type in European Parliament into the search into find here, and let's see what we find. Zero. European Parliament, zero. Look at this, zero. Not a single mention. Let me just do European. Nothing on the front page of CNN. EURPE, is that Europe? Yeah, okay. The word Europe does appear once on the front of CNN in the world section Europe. Okay, so let's go to Europe. Let's see what we got. Europe specific section, war in Ukraine, Russia, Ukraine, Russia, Ukraine, Italian, Italy. There it is, folks. There it is, folks. Oh my God, it still says Turkey. I've been doing that. I'm doing this whole thing with okay. But there it is, folks. Right? It's amazing, right? It's amazing. And this is why we do multiple sources. This is why we're coming from different angles, and we get in the center of the news bukkake. Okay? We take it from all sides because we have to. Could you imagine if you just got your news from MSNBC and CNN? And we talk to these people. You talk to these people in your life. It's your parents, it's your uncles, it's your mother, your father, I guess those would be your parents. You know what I'm saying? We talk to these people who only get their information from one or two sources, like Facebook based off AP links or based off CNN links or MSNBC links or Fox or whatever, if the right-wing poison, right? And that's what happens. What? European Union? What? Scandal? Brussels? I don't like Brussels sprouts.
details about the contours of this investigation, but we know that Vice President Kaylee had her duties suspended. In order to actually suspend her from her vice presidential position, it'll take a decision by the Conference of Presidents in the Parliament. That's probably coming in the next days. We're expecting a pretty strong reaction from the Parliament, but it does look like this is just getting bigger. And so what we know so far is that Kaylee and four assistants were detained on Friday, and that 600,000 euros at least were confiscated, along with laptops, with cell phones. We know that there were 16 searches conducted by the Belgian Federal Police on Friday. This all seems to revolve around two common threads. One is the center-left group in the European Parliament, and the other is this group of Italian NGOs. There is a strong Italian connection here we can see when we look into who's been arrested, and we know that Kaylee's partner, who is Italian, has also been arrested, and there's an NGO that he founded called Fight Impunity, which is now being looked at along with two other Italian NGOs. So it looks as if there is a connection here with Italy, there's a connection here with trade unions. Now, we know that Kaylee, in the relatively recent past, was going out of her way to defend Qatar amid the controversy that the country is experiencing as it hosts the World Cup.
It is the World Cup. It is the World Cup, dude. If the World Cup wasn't happening, this would have gone down without a hitch. This would have gone down without a hitch. She got greedy. Half a billion euros. Oh, she got greedy. Ooh, she's in jail. Oh, girl, she's in jail. Oh, you never see this. What's going to happen to her?
About its treatment of migrant workers in that country. She called Qatar a front runner on labor rights just a couple months ago. We know that she showed up to a vote in the European Parliament in a committee that was looking at whether to have visa liberalization for Qatari citizens. That's a committee she's not even a member of. And more instances of this are being dug out now as people really look at what she's been involved with when it comes to Qatar, things that don't even have anything to do with her duties. So we're learning more and more as this goes along. But again, the common thread here seems to be that this was something targeting particularly lawmakers on the left and particularly trade unions based here in Brussels.
Now, Dave, as you mentioned, this is news that is really rocking Brussels, quite shocking. What are the consequences, in your view, for the European Parliament's reputation?
Jaggy Me Nice, I don't know, is asking how much was it? It was, I think they said like 600,000 or some euros. See if we can get the actual amount. I'm curious now. I forgot. No, somewhere around here, it sounded like over 500 million in euros.
Yeah, already people are calling this the most serious ethics scandal to hit the European Parliament in decades. And some people have pointed out, look, this really highlights a big loophole in the Parliament's transparency rules around lobbying. The European Parliament actually has pretty strong rules about being open and transparent about lobbying, but there is a giant loophole, which is that third countries, like Qatar, any country, is exempt from those requirements. So Qatar would not have had to declare its meetings with MEPs, those MEPs would not have had to.
How would one justify, for everyone else it's a crime, but for us it's not? How does one even justify that? We get to bribe people and steal stuff. It's cool because we do it in our country. So it's, how dare you offend our cultural ways, We should be allowed to bribe. It's insanity.
Declare meetings that they've had with Qatar in the same way that meetings with businesses would need to be declared. So we've already had voices saying, look, this loophole needs to be closed. This is a dangerous moment for the European Parliament. This is an institution that is always, since its founding, when it became directly elected in 1979, has always been fighting for its own relevance. There is always an instinct by the other institutions, the Council of the National Governments, the Commission, which is the executive, to sideline the European Parliament. They always have to fight for their relevance here. And so this will make a lot of MEPs very nervous, because if there is this idea that the Parliament is easily on the take, that's very dangerous. But the other thing people are pointing out here is, of course, the parliament doesn't really have any identifiable power over issues like the World Cup or EU relations with Qatar. But the more you look into it, the more you realize actually there were some pretty influential decisions here. They were looking at this visa liberalization idea that is now on hold. We're told that that is not going to be advancing any longer in the European Parliament. So if you take a look at the broader picture, not just the World Cup, but in general, how the EU is talking about Qatar's record on human rights, I think it will become more clear in the coming days what the motivation here was and whether or not it was effective.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you very much.
her motivation obviously was going to get rich, but like, what's the Qatari angle? Like, what do they get out of it? And let's just see if we can't get that actual amount here. I'm curious now.
EU Parliament. Eva Kaili is among the 4 people being held in a graft investigation. Kaili, who's also a Greek MEP, had been suspended from her duties. Now the Belgian judicial system's looking into allegations that officials from Qatar had attempted to bribe her and 3 other parliamentary assistants in exchange for political favours. Well, for more on that story, we're joined by our Brussels correspondent. Indeed, be staying in police custody along with those 3 other people. What else do we know?
Give us the amount.
Yeah, I mean, this scandal is really rocking Brussels this weekend. It feels like it's all anyone can talk about. In the next days, we're probably going to get more details about the contours of this investigation. But we know that Vice President Kaili had her duties suspended. In order to actually suspend her from her vice presidential next days, we're expecting a pretty strong reaction from the parliament. But it does look like this is just getting bigger. And so what we know so far is that Kaili and 4 assistants were detained on Friday, and that 600,000 euros at least were...
I did hear that right. $600,000. Woohoo! Oh, those Qataris, they got the dough. They got the dough, man. They just throw that shit around. I mean, could you imagine? Could you imagine? Put $500 million. I mean, it's not, euro doesn't, is the euro is actually, I think, isn't the euro worth more than $1? Right? Let's see. Why, how do you spell euro? How do you even spell it? U-R-O on E-U-R-O, E-U-R-O. Yeah, to USD. There it is. Okay, yeah, so it's actually just a little bit more valuable than the dollar. Ooh. Hey, Ram Jam, welcome back to the motherfucking News Underground. Good to see you. Thank you for that follow. This lady's pretty high up. But I remember a very similar story just the last few years back where several people in the European Parliament were getting bribes to downplay Azerbaijan's human rights abuses so their oil could freely flow. Man, greasy ass shit. But the real question is, and hey, they're doing a real investigation. Will we get real information, real transparency? Don't fucking count on it. Don't fucking count me. Get the fuck out of here. You get accountability for who? The princes in Qatar? Oh, I just summoned Santa Claus. That was so funny. Anyway, moving on, last little bit of our European news here before we get to Ukraine, everyone, Ukraine. They're kicking ass, you know it. But this is a great clip from Politics Joe. Love this channel, up and coming, independent UK news, British news, really giving people information outside of the BBC, outside of LBC, which can be a little, sometimes a little, right? Outside of Sky News, outside of the Murdoch sphere of influence, Politics Joe seems to be really getting in there, getting us some of that real dirt, doing some real journalism. I love it. I love their network. I hope they keep going. But we have an interview here with union boss Joe Grady, and she explains why Brits need to stand with striking posties. Posties. It's a British term. But yeah, this is a great interview. She's great. Let me tell you. You got a fighter like this on your side. Keep fighting, right? We need a couple million more Joes in our life. Okay, it's so funny. It's Joe Politics. Her name's Joe. That's so great. How interesting. All right, let's have a listen.
We are here supporting our posties. They've been in dispute for a very, very long time. They've got a CEO who basically seems unhinged. So I'm here, like many others, supporting them so that they win their dispute.
This is quite powerful. We're right opposite Parliament. Do you think the government are going to be forced to take this into consideration now?
Let's be clear, I think this government is absolutely shitting themselves. We already have some of the most restrictive labour laws in the world, and in response to this, the government's response isn't, wow, we should be doing something. It's, let's look at how we can squeeze legislation to choke industrial action even further.
Yeah.
So they should be taking notice. I think what they're trying to do is deflect with the threat of legislation, but this is going to change things.
I think that you have a little bit of a harder time with the press because you're the UCU, and universities and colleges, sometimes it's seen as sort of lefty-loveys or, you know, people who take the system for granted. What would you describe your workers as?
Our workers are like everybody else. They want to settle down. They want some security. They want to be able to do the jobs that they've trained for and love and get paid properly. I think any misconception that they're lovies or they're all middle class, anyone who's been to university knows that's not true. And I actually think that's the strength of our dispute and our membership, because I think politicians and some sections of the media really try and press that line. But if you've been to university or you've got a nephew or a niece or a grandchild, you know that's not the case. And our sector has £40 billion of reserves. It has more than enough money to pay everyone properly. They're just not doing it. And I think that actually is something that every worker understands, knowing that you're being shortchanged and you're...
And look, if you're a cynic and you're asking, well, it can't be like that, because if then why are they going through all this trouble, right? Why are they going through all this trouble to push people back if they actually have all the money and everything, and they're actually just lying to us about, you know, oh, well, you know, we can't give people raises because that'll ruin our industry and it'll ruin our business and everything will go under if we just pay people more. We can't do that. It's like, well, why are they going through all this trouble then? Why not just pay people more and then get back to business and everyone makes money? Look, the oligarchy sees themselves as separate from the regular populace, okay? They're in a club. You're not in it. They're special. They're brilliant, okay? And they're insulted personally. I'm talking about the oligarchy that runs these governments, these Western governments. They're personally insulted when a worker asks for more, because from their perspective, I could make their lives much worse. I could, you know, pay them far less and give them less and I'm doing so much, and I'm already just all over this, and I'm just so altruistic. And they're asking for more, and how dare they? And I need to get a whole new monocle because this one keeps falling out of the shock. That's the mentality, right? And that's why they don't want to give an inch. They don't want to budge on anything. Benefits, wages, making your job better, remote work, none of it. They don't want to budge on any of it because they know, and they're right on this, that if they budge on one thing, the people will realize that they have the power to get them to budge on other things. It opens the door and it tells people that activism works. They need to reinforce the idea that all this fire and fury doesn't mean anything, and the only way to make change is through these, you know, completely corrupt centrist politicians that speak in flowery language and super hyper incremental change, just incredibly small changes. That's the only way we can do things, folks. You can't have a better life right now. It's just impossible. You need to accept that argument. How dare you ask for more? You want a retirement? You want more wages? You need to get a third job. You need to get 4 jobs if you want a retirement. I work so hard. I work 6 hours a week. I work 6 hours a week to make my fortune, and you insult me. That's their mentality. That's where they're coming from. All right. You need to understand that we as a people are fighting mentally ill sociopaths who don't care about your feelings, and you're just a cog. Don't you understand? Okay. And this is some grand game that they're playing. Okay. You need to understand that, okay? Because they don't bend. It's not about your feelings. It's not about common sense. It's about their pile. It's about their pile of gold, okay? And if you're not making that pile bigger, then you need to be eradicated. That's the attitude.
The boss is laughing.
You've got 15,000 people here today on Parliament Square on a Friday. Do you think that the general public's attitude towards striking is changing?
I definitely think the attitude towards people striking right now is changing.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm in a little WhatsApp with the girlies, and literally people I'm not going to the sorting office today, even though it's open. People sharing, people that I don't normally see as politically engaged, sharing this stuff. And I think when there's a tendency to present strikers as not us, people forget that they are us. They live in our households, they're in our families.
Yeah. And it is shocking. It is shocking to see the Tories constantly dehumanize union workers, calling them every name in the book and like literally using it as an insult to the Labor Party, literally using it as an insult to the Labor Party. Oh, you're listening to the unions. You're listening to what they say, they call them the tyrannical unions. It's insulting. And look, man, I can't believe that people who consider themselves rural, salt of the earth, hard-working, blue-collar, that they would allow themselves to demonize one of the most essential tools that they need in their economic position to get a leg up, which is unionized, collective bargaining. And here they are. I mean, just the bottom of the barrel, man, minimum wage kind of workers. Oh, I don't want a union. No, union's terrible. Union would be terrible for me. It's unbelievable that people are buying that, right? And it works. It works. It absolutely works.
Trade unions have millions and millions of members if you combine them. And I think that there is a common theme developing in the UK, which is people being able to articulate how unfair things are, and the fact that for some people, access to resources that others don't have, wages that others don't have, the peaks of success and the troughs of despair are more apparent than they've ever been. And that is why people are backing strikes.
Hey. Great work, amazing, brilliant, and totally eloquent. Great. Can we get a couple more million of this woman, please? Can we get a couple more million Joe Grady's, right? They're not going to come out of thin air. It's you. You need to turn yourself into a Joe Grady. You can do this. You can do this. You got a brain. You can see common sense. You know what to fight for. You know what's right. You too can become a Joe Grady. It's absolutely possible. It is absolutely possible. So there you go, folks. That's the UK update. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to do more UK news, of course, coming up. Brexit still hasn't gone away. We got a re-election happening, I guess, in a couple of years. But it's interesting how the Tories are throwing a bunch of shit against the wall and like really nothing is sticking. And everyone's just kind of waiting for the re-election. It's kind of funny. I don't know. Do you think it would actually benefit the Tories if they did a re-election right now? It actually might give them some. They're going to lose either way. I mean, not either way. I don't know. It benefits them to not do a re-election because then they can drag out the clock, spread propaganda through the populace about how they're not so bad, and then that actually gives them a viable chance because people's memories are very short. Less so in the UK, I've noticed. People do have a tendency to remember a little bit longer in the UK than they do in the United States. But that would be the wise move for the UK. So anyway, thank you, YouTube. Like and subscribe. Check out the Twitch. I'd love to see you.